Bhutan Watch is an independent, non-profit, and non-partisan think tank. With me, we have Ashika Daurali joining from Rome to assist us for making this program a successful one. Today, we are discussing an important topic, the issue of Bhutan-China boundary. We have with us a very distinguished expert on the issue, Dr. Manoj Joshi from New Delhi. Dr. Joshi is a journalist and a distinguished fellow at the Observer Research Foundation, an independent global think tank based in New Delhi. He has been a journalist specializing in national and international politics and is a commentator, a columnist on this issue. As a journalist, he has written extensively on issues relating to Siachen, Pakistan, China, Sri Lanka, and terrorism in Kashmir and Punjab. Very recently, he published an article on Bhutan-China settling border issue under the heading, Bhutan's attempt to smoothen border issues with its northern neighbor marked a significant shift in its geopolitical perspective. Today, we will hear from Dr. Joshi on the issues surrounding Bhutan-China boundary dispute, talks to resolve them, and the concern India has about such talks and possible deals. Welcome, Dr. Joshi, to our program. Next, we have one of the finest brains of the Bhutanese community, Dr. Govinda Rizal, as our speaker. Dr. Govinda Rizal is a scholar in the community. He has written several articles on Bhutan-China issues. Back in 2007, Dr. Govinda Rizal shocked the entire Bhutanese community when he published an article claiming that the political map of Bhutan had changed, with Bhutan's tallest mountain unceremoniously ceded to China. Initially, people didn't believe, and he was widely criticized. But later, this development was confirmed by the international media, especially the Indian media. Then his article received wider recognition. Dr. Govinda Rizal is the author of Pardesi in Paradise and the editor of Bhutan Journal published by Bhutan Watch. Welcome, Dr. Rizal, to this program. We welcome both speakers to this online platform. The Bhutan-China boundary dispute started with the takeover of Tibet by China in 1950. They have held 25 rounds of talks as of now to resolve the boundary issue since they started in 1984. But as of now, instead of coming closer to resolving the dispute, we have been hearing about the construction of villages, towns, and other infrastructure by China inside the Bhutanese territory. And this news is too shocking for every Bhutanese, both inside and outside the country. Now, first, I'll ask Dr. Joshi to speak on the issue. Then I'll request Dr. Govinda to speak on the same. Dr. Joshi, can you share with our audience?
Yeah, I can. I can hear you.
Yes, Dr. Joshi, can you share with our audience the exact status of Bhutan-China border dispute at the moment from your perspective?
Well, you see, right from the beginning, there has the Bhutan-China border dispute went in parallel with the India-China border dispute, meaning the entire India-China boundary is disputed according, and then when it comes to the Bhutan-China boundary, I think 470 kilometers or so, is also disputed. Now, the problem is that till we have some idea of what was happening till about the year 2000, because the report of the National Assembly used to be put up on the internet, and we used to get some kind of a background there. And so there, my understanding is that at one point, the Chinese offered the Bhutanese side to trade, the Doklam area with the northern claims. They had certain northern claims. And I think, but the whole issue has had many ups and downs. And one of them, of course, Dr. Rizal has pointed out about the mountain, the Kulakangdi, I think, in the north, where suddenly in the National Assembly itself, the Bhutanese official said, actually, there was a mistake in our boundary. So now we are correcting it. You see? And so almost voluntarily, I would say voluntarily, Bhutan shed that area. But, the Chinese did not give any, there was no concession given in return. It was, Bhutan made a one-way concession. See? Since then, of course, there has been some amount of opacity. We don't get that much information that we used to get on this status of the border talks. Of course, in the National Assembly, there were constant complaints from the Bhutanese who lived in the border areas of incursions by the Chinese. The big problem for Bhutan is that Bhutan in South Asia, Bhutan's population in relative to the other South Asian countries is very small. And it was very clear from the beginning that the Bhutanese lacked the capacity to police their border. They were simply unable to police the border. And the Chinese have very cleverly utilized Tibetan herders, so the herds come in the summer season. They come into Bhutanese territory. The Bhutanese are unable to do anything about it. Okay? Now, the claims are fairly well known, meaning they're well known for a long time. The Bhutanese, disputed areas were basically in the north and in the western Bhutan. But suddenly, 2 years ago, the Chinese resurrected their eastern Bhutan claims. They suddenly resurrected their eastern Bhutan claims. So that means that their claims in Bhutan are fairly extensive. Now, whether they did it for the purpose of negotiation, or whether there was some other reason, we don't know. But the important thing is that, it was during the October 2021 10th round of their expert group meeting that suddenly this three-step roadmap came before us. And at that time, the then Prime Minister said that, we will settle in 2 or 3 rounds of talks, which was quite a surprising development. Now, of course, in the last year, I think in October or November, the China and Bhutan held their 25th round of border talks in Beijing. The previous 24 rounds had been held in the 8 years since in 2016. The previous round to that had been held in 2016. So from 2016 to 2021, this suddenly came up. Now, the thing is that when you talk to Bhutanese officials, they often say that Chinese are not occupying any part of Bhutan. They are very clear on that.
Yes, Dr. Klossi, can I interrupt you now? In March 2023, speaking with the Belgian newspaper, then Bhutanese Prime Minister Lote Tshering claimed that Bhutan did not have major border problem with China, and even denied report that China had built villages inside Bhutanese territory. How do you, like just now you said that there is a huge boundary dispute between India, China and Bhutan, but the Prime Minister of Bhutan himself claimed that there is no major boundary dispute. So what do you take from this statement?
See, there has been a lot of confusion there. It is very clear. Even it is clear from the time in the year 1999, 2000, that the Chinese were really pressing for a trade-off. They wanted to occupy Doklam area. And they were willing to concede the other areas. So they were interested in Doklam because it has strategic significance with regard to India. See? And at that time, there were reports that they had almost agreed to the deal when the Indians stepped in and prevented that deal from happening. See, now what is happening is that in Doklam in 2017, the Indians had intervened to prevent the Chinese from occupying, the Zompelri Ridge. And the problem is that it got settled, but only temporarily. So after the Indians withdrew, the Chinese have consolidated their hold in northern Doklam. And besides northern Doklam, they have started building a road down the Amochu River. And that's where their settlement, that Pangda settlement, has come up, which is very clearly in Bhutanese territory. Now, the problem is that Bhutan was not party to the Anglo-Chinese Convention that settled the Sikkim Tibet border. So Bhutan was not party to that, you see. And now, when the Chinese say that it is settled, but it's not settled vis-a-vis Bhutan. Bhutan still has a point of view. Now, as far as Doklam is concerned, the Indians view it as a very strategic area. But during the Doklam crisis, there were some revelations about the Sino-Indian border talks. And amongst the interesting revelation was that China had agreed with India that wherever it comes to tri-junctions, all three countries must agree. So, this area is obviously a tri-junction. And I think the Bhutanese Lote Sher had admitted that this is an area which, he was unclear about how that would be settled. But he indicated that that would not be part of the settlement with China at this stage.
Yes, yes. In the same newspaper, Lote Sering has claimed that Doklam issue needs to be resolved trilaterally between China, India, and Bhutan. And I think this is the stand of India as well. So what is the problem here? What is
India's stand is also that. You see, India does not accept what India is saying is that we don't accept the Anglo-Chinese Convention. Okay? All we are doing, in the talks that we have had, the special representatives talks that India and China have had, what has happened is we only have agreement on the basis of alignment. Now, this is a very interesting point. So they say that it's not that treaty that we go by. It is that India and China have agreed on the basis of alignment, which means the watershed. You see? So, but as of now, those talks have not concluded, the India-China talks, and the last dialogue was held in 2019. There has been no special representative dialogue between India and China since then. Whereas in the case of Bhutan, as you know, there have been several successive dialogues. And so earlier, the impression was that the Bhutanese government will be lockstep with India, and they will conclude their border negotiations. They will what should I say? They will synchronize their border negotiations with India's border negotiations. But now it would appear that the Bhutanese have moved. But now we don't know with the new PDP government in Bhutan what Shering Tobgay, Prime Minister Shering Tobgay, what will be the new stand of Bhutan on these border negotiations. But it's very obvious that they are under fairly considerable Chinese pressure because of the construction in northern Bhutan, the area where the Chinese have started also building villages in those areas, plus the Chinese revival of the eastern claim. You see, all these are pressure tactics on Bhutan, and Bhutan is a small country. There was, one incident when the Bhutanese told the Chinese, I think this must have been, I've forgotten now what it was, when the Bhutanese told the Chinese that, look, we have given, we are a small country, you must give us some concession out here. So Chinese very bluntly told them, small country, big country, no concession.
Yes, Dr. Josh, it's very interesting. Many Bhutanese feel that Bhutan, as a sovereign country, should have the right to resolve a dispute as per Bhutan's national interest, rather than to fulfill others' national interest at the cost of their national interest. Bhutanese people further feel that given Indo-China deepening border rivalry post-Galwan 2020, with tense situation on various fronts of their 3,500 kilometer shared boundary, Bhutan should resolve its dispute at the earliest and stay away from their perennial border tension. Do you comment on this concern?
No, I would agree with them, because for the simple reason that it is very clear that Bhutan does not have the capacity to police the border. If they cannot police the border, then how are they going to? Whereas in the case of India, we can police the border. We have a large army presence all across the border. But since Bhutan and India no longer have a defense agreement, there's no clear-cut defense agreement between the two. So I would advise the Bhutanese to settle. But the point is, at this stage, they will be settling under pressure. I think they should, as a small country, make their negotiations more public, let people know. You see, let people know where exactly the Chinese are pressing, and this construction that has come up, that is very obvious to satellites above. The Chinese must give some answer as to why they are there, but the Bhutanese are not acknowledging it.
Exactly. What does exactly India fear from Bhutan's engagement with China on its border dispute?
I beg your pardon?
What does India fear from this Bhutan engagement with China on its border dispute? Is that Doklam?
No. See, the thing is that there is the local issue of Doklam, because in that, if the Chinese get control of that Zompelri ridge, they have an oversight into the the Siliguri corridor.
Yes.
Okay, so it's strategic. But I personally don't agree with that. I think if we are more aggressive, the Indians from northern Sikkim can cut off the entire Chumbi Valley.
Mm-hmm.
See, if Indian military planning is more aggressive, and this was the kind of threat, because northern Sikkim is a flat area like Tibet, and from northern Sikkim, the Chumbi Valley becomes very vulnerable. And in fact, one of the vulnerabilities of Bhutan is that because of that vulnerability, the Chinese may choose to attack Bhutan and come towards India, come south. So, and the problem with the Chinese is that their claims keep shifting. They have not given us any, while we know the Bhutanese position, we don't know what the Chinese position is. We don't know with any clarity, you see. So what the Chinese position is. And definitely Bhutan, a Himalayan country which opens out towards India, for us, that itself is a vulnerability. You see, it is a vulnerability. The other thing is that, you know, in Bhutan, the Chinese have also carried out quite a bit of information operations, because the Chinese software like WeChat and others, TikTok, are still widely available there. You see, so there is a shift in the attitude of some of the young people who are saying, let us, you know, make a deal with China and get away from that. And I can understand Bhutan's point of view, because you make a deal with China, you get the Chinese will provide you more aid, they will provide you assistance, etc. even though India provides a lot of it, but the temptation of having China also providing it, this is the pattern in South Asia, meaning whether you look at Sri Lanka, whether you look at Maldives, this is what is happening.
Exactly. What does India want exactly does India want a role in Bhutan-China boundary engagement? What does India want in Bhutan-China boundary engagement? Does it want a role to play?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so, because that there used to be a role up to about 2000, but now I don't think, our treaty has been, Bhutan-India treaty has been upgraded. So I don't think India wants a role there, but certainly India wants a settlement which will not impinge on its security.
So do you see any prospect of fulfilling India's wish in the near future on this particular?
It is possible, meaning it is possible. That depends on how the government of Bhutan carries out its border negotiation. As I said, but the problem is that this negotiation is being carried out while one side is changing the terms of the negotiation. One side is continuing. So essentially, as I told you, India-China border is disputed. China-Bhutan border is disputed. In the case of the India-China border, the Chinese are not constructing villages on the Indian side of the LAC, of the line of actual control, because we have a forward deployment. We will not permit that. But in the case of Bhutan, Bhutan's unable to do that. Bhutan's unable to block them. So Bhutan takes a simple view that that is not our territory. So they have already conceded in a certain way.
What is the role of IMTRAT, Indian Military Training Team? There are Dantak, there are GREF, they are stationed in Bhutan. Does they play any security role in protecting the border? No.
Not really. Nothing to do with the border.
Okay.
Basically, it is a training team, and our inputs are limited.
Thank you, Dr. Joshi. Now I'll come to Dr. Govinda Rijal. Do you add on what Dr. Joshi has argued? Can you go ahead, Dr. Rijal?
Okay, Ram, thank you very much. It was nice listening to, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was nice listening to Dr. Manoj. Manoj, thank you for joining us. Yes, we have already got into the crux of the issues, but for the audience who may not know much about the issue, what we are talking about, I briefly go back to the background of the issue so that we'll have some idea. Like Bhutan's border was never stable. Like once, maybe when the British Raj was there in India, Bhutan's border extended until Tinsukia in the east, that is part of Arunachal Pradesh one time. Second time, it was up to Nepal's Kosi River. So Bhutanese soldiers were up to Nepal's Kosi River. And south, the doors were under doors, including Kuch Bihar and all those Palakata area. 18 doors were under Bhutan. So Bhutan's border has been changing frequently and mostly through war and conflict with the neighboring states. And the last war that we remember is 1865 with the Anglo-Bhutan War. And that led to almost making the present status of Bhutan's map. So in 1865, until 1865, Bhutan claimed to have 56,000 square kilometer of land, and the Treaty of Sinchula in 1865, after the war, lot of big segment from the southern part, that is the Dors region, 18 Dors, were ceded to British India, and it was continued. And for that one, British India paid 50,000 Indian rupees to one for the loyalty of the treaty and for the compensation of the war, plus the compensation of the land that was ceded to India. And it continued. There was British India in India. In 1907, monarchy came to Bhutan. A monarchy was established in Bhutan, and to have a revision in the treaty in 1910, treaty was revised. The door was still ceded to India, British India, that time, and about the compensation was increased to 100,000, 1 lakh. Then the treaty was again ceded, again updated in 1949 after India got independent. That was the 1949 treaty. And during that time, India gave a small region, about 18 square kilometer of land in Devangiri, that is Deothang. And Bhutan and India had some land swap, like in Kalimpong, it was the Bhutan state was there, state like the tea state or bigger than that. And India has a state in Motithang and Chukka. So it was agreement between Indian government and Bhutan government, but gradually those claims were lost. So now India doesn't claim any area in Chukka or Motithang, and Bhutan does not claim the area in Kalimpong. So that is not reflected. And in 1949 treaty, the money was increased to 500,000. In 1910, it was 100,000. In 1949, it was 500,000. So there has been many changes between 1950 and 1960. Like Tibet was taken over by China. Tibet has been independent from 1911 to 1950. And that time, Bhutan's immediate neighbor, northern neighbor, was Tibet. So there was some conflict. There was friendship, both friendship and conflict. As per the change in the leaders, there were changes in the relationship. And after China took over Tibet, China became the immediate neighbor of Bhutan. And there were some lands inside Bhutan, those were called enclaves, Bhutanese enclaves in Tibet. Now they are permanently lost to China because Bhutan does not claim. And what we are discussing today is Bhutan's land or border, international border, is to be discussed only with the permission of the king. So only king gives a permission to discuss. Unless king says it is there is a conflict, other people cannot say. Unless the king or the government says there is a dispute in the land, we are not allowed to speak. So whoever government officer we talk in Bhutan, it does not matter. There is a one voice because it has to come from the highest authority. In 1959, China published a map, and it says Zhejiang de Wuji. That means Tibet is a palm, and there are 5 fingers down. They include Ladakh, Nepal, Sikkim, Bhutan, and northeast frontiers, that is Arunachal Pradesh. So these are the 5 fingers, and Tibet is the palm of China. So that started the problem, and Bhutan, to secure itself from the Chinese takeover like Tibet, and there are other many factors in between. Bhutan has to side with India. So Bhutan is with India in all aspects, and even with the British treaties, Bhutan had to agree with the external affairs with the Indian side or the British side. Before British, now India. And the treaty was revised in 2007. Many things happened between 2005 and 2008, including the revision of treaty between Bhutan and India. And this treaty does not talk about the money that India used to give to Bhutan. It does not talk anything, whether it was revised or whether they give directly to the royal copper instead of the state copper, because it was with the agreement was between the then foreign minister Pranab Mukherjee and the Prince of Bhutan, the present king. So this revised treaty gives more freedom to Bhutan. Like Bhutan can have a direct contact or international relations without having to inform to India. So these are the things. And once the Chinese came up and came to the border, then the conflict where our borders are. Like Dr. Manoj said before, there's a Rig and Chu. Rig is mountain in the local language. Name plus Rig means that name plus mountain, name of that mountain. The name and Chu means river. So most of the written document, they mention Chu, Mocho, or Mocho. So those are the boundaries. But what they have done is before the hard concrete pillars were set up, there were the flags on the top of the mountain. So locally, we call those flags as the boundary between two countries. So it is a boundary between Bhutan and India, Bhutan and Tibet, or Bhutan on Tibet in the north. Those flags were on the top of the mountains, but the names were with the rivers. Like if it is Amosu, then Amosu river is flowing. And just next to the Amosu, there is a tall mountain, and the flags are on the top tall mountain. So that is the crux of the problem between the dispute between China and Bhutan. It comes with the naming of the places. Now, next one is between 1972 and 84, Indian ambassador in Bhutan or Bhutanese ambassador in India, they used to lead delegation to China to make talks. And in 1981, until 1981, there was no progress with the talk between Bhutan and China. And there was, we knew that people were coming and going. And on the western side that we are talking about Doklam, just west of Doklam is Yedong province, Yedong county of the Tibet or the China. And that is where most of the fugitives from Bhutan had fled, like in just before, between 1905 and 1907, there were battle in Thimphu and several places in Bhutan. Before Wangchuck dynasty was established, all those people who lost the war, they fled to Tibet, and they live in Yedung province. And their descendants live in Yedung province. Some live in Sikkim, some live in part of Nepal or Kathmandu. So Bhutan, the present system does not want to involve this part, Yedung province people, so they want to ignore. So Doklam province is almost of no use except for the scenic beauty of the land. It is quite hard and difficult terrain, but there is like a Dantak office or Imtat office is quite about 40 or 50 kilometers north of that conflict area. They have the office for the training. And in 1981, Bhutan's foreign minister Dao Tsering and Chinese foreign minister, they met in New York, and they decided to have official talk between Bhutan and China, and without the direct involvement of India or without having the Indian representative in the team. And starting 1984, Bhutan started the formal dialogue. That was the first time. It was officially first time, but they have already met several times before. And for the first 4 meetings, there were Indian representative in the Bhutanese delegation, which Chinese did not like. And in 1987-88, for the first time, China floated one map that showed the areas which conflicted with Bhutan. And that raised the alarm to the Bhutanese government, and the royal government immediately raised the issue. Then it became public. There were controversies, and there were controversies in 7 different places. In Doklam area 3, 2 in the 2 or 3 in the 3 in the north, and 1 in the east, the Saktan area that will come later. So those were the regions of dispute between Bhutan and China. And immediately in 1988, Bhutan government and the government of China, they have a joint communique on the guiding principle for the settlement of boundary. And they said that until the boundary is finalized, or the line of boundary is finalized, we will follow until the 1958 Bhutan-China border. So whatever was there in 1958 or before, we'll follow until our new settlement is done. That was done in 88, and it has to be solved within 10 years. That was the gentleman agreement, but it did not solve. In 1998, the agreement was renewed, and it said that the agreement on maintenance of peace and tranquility and the status quo in Bhutan-China border areas that was signed in 1998. So there were talks going on simultaneously, and there were agreements and disagreements because some of the herders were crossing during summer when it is very cold up there in Tibet. Some herders were crossing, and there were problems with the local people in Bhutan. And in 1958, there is another issue between 53 and 58. Like the southern border was to be guarded by the people living in the southern Bhutan, who are mostly of Nepalese and Indian origin. And northern border has to be has to be protected by the Drukpa people in the top. So it is a Drukpa Bhutanese security concept. Drukpas guide the northern borders, and the Bhutanese protect the southern borders. So northern border was a problem, and southern border there were problem with India because the doors issue was not formally solved because suddenly there was a line in between, and same family, they have the land. Some land fell on the Indian side, some land fell on the Bhutan side. There was family separation, but they were never raised. And on the Indian side, they could plant tea until the border. And on the Bhutan side, they were not allowed to plant tea cultivation, because from that cultivation, we know where the Indian border ends and Bhutan border starts. So even today, the tea cultivation has some type of taboo on the border side in Bhutan. Suddenly, in 2005, there are many things that happened in between. Will not go into detail. 2005, the king of Bhutan wanted to leave the throne and give the throne to his son. He wanted to introduce democracy, and he wanted people's participation to form the government, introduction of political parties, all those things associated with the democracy. And all people were preparing for the democracy coming up in the country. Suddenly, there was a discussion in Thimphu that the constitution have to be constituents have to be delimited based on the socio-economic demographic differences, based on where people of which groups are mostly. The lines for the constituents were delimited that time, and that was the time that the Kulakangri was not in the map. The Kulakangri, which all the school students have studied as the tallest mountain of Bhutan, 7,538 meter tall. That was no more in the map. And before, we had 7 regions of dispute, and suddenly this region, which was ceded unceremoniously, means without any information to anyone, it was not included in the Bhutan map. That means there was a general understanding that 4 regions which were under disputes were swapped with this land, like the Saktan region, some region in the middle. So 4 regions and 2 regions in the west, they were swapped. They were given to Bhutan, and the Kulakangri region was given to China. That was the general understanding, nowhere in the writing. And only 3 regions left out of 7. 3 regions left. 1, the Doklam region in the west, and 2 in the central north. But and there were cases of land swap. Like land swap has been a practice for a long time. There has been land swap in the Sakten and other area also before. That was in around 1906, I believe. Since there were land swap, it was not a big problem. But the Doklam area, which is not habituated, or there are no people living in that area, it is such a place that there are saying that people used to see big ship moving in the Bengal Ocean. So when it is a clear day, those days there was no pollution. It was not foggy on the way, so you could see the ship on the ocean. So it is that importance of that area. It is a plateau, a small plateau, 100 meters square. From there, you can see the ship in the West Bengal means that is how strategic that point is. And just west of that point, that belongs to Bhutan. There is no question. Just west of that, on the lowland, it is Yedung province, where people who are not liked by the elites in Thimphu, they live it there. So they want to have this place not heavy populated, or they don't want any people to live in this border area. And China is taking advantage, like they are developing their roads or other systems in their area, not in the Doklam area, because Doklam area is quite high. It is a plateau, just nearby, but the nearest to the border. And they are doing but the case with the northern part in the Pasalung area, we have not gone there. But what is our source is the satellite maps. Satellite maps clearly show there are constructions, and the constructions have gone inside Bhutan. And 2 years back, when this news was at its peak, then some of our friends in Bhutan, they wanted to visit that place personally. So they went to Lunchi, but there is one Centennial Wangchuk National Park. Just before you enter that national park, there is a recreation center. You can go until that recreational center that was funded by some Australian organization, but you cannot visit now. And beyond that is Centennial. Centennial means it was established in 2007. We know it now because from the name, Wangchu dynasty came in 2007. 100 years is, 1907, and 100 years is 2007. So this park was declared a national park, the Centennial Wangchuk National Park in 2007. And people are not allowed to go across this national park. And that road has connection with this one. So what you can see is you see a road coming out of the national park, but you cannot go beyond this. And the satellite map shows the crossing of the international border is beyond that national park. So there's a border crossing on the northern part, in the central north part, and it continues to Bhutan. And there's one more border going towards Tashiangsi, but it is yet to reach the border. That is the third road. And all these three districts, Lunsi, north of Bumthang, and Tashiangsi, all these are relatively remote districts of Bhutan. There are few population and remote. So if the road comes through China to this place, it has advantage to the people, the local people. And another advantage about what we should not be taking as a remote thing about this one is in Jakarlong Highway or Longxi Highway, people on the northern part, it is the Ladruk County, that is the county in Tibet. It is under the Sanon Prefecture. And the people in this region and people in Lunsi, they share the same heritage. Means either the people came from Lodruk province to Lodruk county to Lunsi, or Lunsi people went to Tibetan province. But the same people who follow the same thing, they are called the Lo people, Loman people. And there is a big population of these people, and their origin, they share the similar monasteries, they share the similar belief, and even their ancestors are similar. So on the local level, there is not a problem. Okay, it is only the problem at the international level. And the biggest problem is we are not allowed to speak. The media in Bhutan is not allowed to discuss like what we are doing today. And they have to get the permission, and they don't get the permission to discuss on this issue. So that is a problem. It is very opaque. The media opaqueness is the problem for now. So this is the background of the story. I'm not sure how much I could explain.
Thank you, Dr.
Okay, if there are some questions coming in between, so we can go ahead. Okay.
Thank you for your deep insight. It is really appreciating. Now we are audience and got the context to what we are discussing. Like, do you accept that there is a dispute between the border dispute between Bhutan and China, Dr. Govind Rizal? Did you?
Jessica, can you?
No?
Okay. Okay, Ram, maybe there is internet instability. Is it okay?
Now it's okay?
Looks like.
Yes. Do you accept that there is a dispute, boundary dispute between Bhutan and China?
Oh, are you asking to me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, dispute in terms that there are unsolved areas. There are 3 or 4 unsolved areas. Now, if you talk it as a dispute, then it may be a big news, right? But it is yet to be finalized where the actual line of division between the two countries. It is yet to be delimited, and there are 3 levels of teams that are working on it. If there is no dispute, then they should not have been working, right? So since they are working, there are people to work, and there are 25 round of bilateral talk on the border issues at the ministerial level, about 10 to 12, 13 13 expert levels, and maybe 3 or 4 technical level exchanges. So that means there is a problem, and people are working towards solving it. That's what I understand.
I was asking that question because, as you mentioned, that in Bhutan, the people doesn't talk on this particular issue because this is the prerogative of the highest authority to speak. And even the ministers, even the high bureaucrat doesn't speak. So we are taking this chance, we are taking this opportunity to discuss this particular issue, to educate the larger mass in the country, inside and outside. So that is the significance of this discussion, though it looks local, but this discussion has a huge significance inside Bhutan and around the world among the Bhutanese diaspora. Like, I want to come back to Dr. Rizal. How can Bhutan, if there is a dispute, like the Global Times has claimed that there is no dispute, the outgoing Prime Minister Lotte Schering has told in the Belgium newspaper in March 2023 and in a similar time in Hindu that there is a minor issue. It will be solved within a few months within his own tenure. But in the international media, like almost every fortnightly, we get the chance to read on this particular issue, the satellite footage constructing the towns and villages, roads, like the Saktan wildlife reserve place that is deep inside the eastern Bhutan has been claimed by Bhutan, China, and so etc. So this is really a confusion. It's a really big confusion. So what do you say, Dr. Rizal? How can Bhutan conclude this border dispute with China without antagonizing either India or China and without compromising its national interests? What do you say that?
Okay. So let's talk about the Sakten, brief about Sakten. I talked about the 7 disputed regions. When Kulakangri was given, the Sakten was also included. Means maybe it was as a land swap, Bhutan got the Sakten area. Sakten is a wildlife reserve area. But 2016 or 2021, suddenly the Bhutan was claiming for support to work on this region, and Chinese representative had a protest. They said that this is a region under dispute, so we don't suggest giving support right now unless the dispute is cleared. But it was put down, the request was put down, and there was some funding to support wildlife study in this area. So Saktan region is in the east. At present, if you look at the Doklam and Pasalum exchange swap, it may solve the issue for now, but the problem is with the Doklam itself because it is a strategic position. And if China gets Doklam, the plateau, where it is good for the observatory, then, like we said, it can be a big threat to India, because nearest India's nearest what is that army base, military base is in Ashimara. Ashimara is about a very short distance from there. So maybe India feels threatened to its Ashimara base, or even the Siliguri corridor that we are talking about, 23-inch, it is only 60 kilometers from that point. So it is within a missile range, and it is in the strategic post. So it may be a country's fear in a long term. For the present, when both sides are okay, there may not be a fear, but we do not know what type of leader will come in which country, and they start bossing around with the neighbors. So that time it may create problem, but for now it may not be a big problem. And both Bhutan and China, they are capable of solving it. But the issue has been dragged long and long, and it is giving benefit to Bhutan. Okay, let me tell you how it is benefiting Bhutan. The 1959 in Chinese claims here that Bhutan is one of the fingers. So it was feared that Bhutan may be taken as like Tibet, whole country is taken as Tibet. But since there are disputes in between, the small disputes, 100 meters square, 60 meters square, 250 or 269. Now we know that the country does not belong to China, but only few small places are there which has to be solved. That is where Bhutan is waiting for a longer international, what is that? International recognition of this dispute, so that we can say that it is not the Bhutan. Bhutan does not belong to China. Only the few points along the border are on the dispute. So that is a safer point for Bhutan. So longer the dispute continues, it gives recognition for Bhutan.
Thank you, Dr. Rizal. Now I'll come back to Dr. Joshi. The same question: how can Bhutan conclude its border with China without antagonizing either India or China, and even without compromising its national interest?
That's a very difficult kind of a scenario, because first of all, in any border negotiation, whether even if Bhutan was a powerful country and as powerful as China, in any border negotiation, there is always give and take. That's a given in any thing. Now, in this particular case, it is an asymmetrical one, because Bhutan is a very small country. Bhutan lacks the capacity to police its border. And so the decks are stacked against Bhutan. As far as India is concerned, India and Bhutan have settled their border claims, and I think even they have even put boundary markers all along the border. So India's interest in the China-Bhutan issue is an indirect one. It's not a direct one. It is because of our disputed border. Like if you take Sakteng, for example, where is Sakteng? Sakteng is located south of Tawang.
West of Tawang.
Well, south of Tawang, well, sort of southwest, south of this thing.
Really west, really west. If you see
Not
the
west.
map over there is a rhino
No.
horn.
Sakteng is here.
Yeah.
Sakteng is there, and just north of that is Tawang.
Okay.
See?
Okay.
So the thing is that, and our boundary is disputed there, and the Chinese,
that's a boundary.
In their recent border negotiations with India, the Chinese have been saying that the minimum that they will need, the minimum concession they need, is that India should give them the Tawang Tract. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that even Sakteng has a because in Sakteng, in that area, apparently, I'm not an expert in that this thing, but apparently there are areas, there are people of some Tibetan origin there in some of those areas. And that is the reason why the Chinese have suddenly have come up with the claim, because in all the earlier rounds, Sakteng had not been taken up, but it was there. So what I'm trying to say is that whether it is Doklam, whether it is Sakteng, this has a direct implication on our border. But the other point I'd like to make is that, look, while India can look after itself, it has strong military deployments, you know, it has very strong, in fact, in Sikkim, I would say that our military deployments are stronger than those of China. See? So what I'm trying to say is that we have very strong military deployments, so we are quite capable of looking after ourselves. But the problem is that in the case of Bhutan, we can't, as I said, legally, you have described the 2007 treaty. We have no direct role in the defense, no automatic role in the defense of Bhutan. And in any case, what Bhutan needs is not Indian help, but Bhutanese help. Meaning they need to get their some clarity of their own on the issue. And their problem has been that they have not been giving us much information on what exactly is happening in these talks. And my own assessment, as I said, is that they are the interests of Bhutan and China are very different in this. The Chinese are basically interested in looking at India, meaning their claims in Bhutan is basically an indirect way of dealing with India and the vulnerability of the Chumbi Valley, you see, and they're trying to deal with that. But as far as Bhutan is concerned, it should lay out its perspective more clearly, because by not acknowledging the Chinese encroachment in Bhutanese territory, they are doing disservice to themselves, I think. Their own case is being weakened. Because these are, you know, this is what is called creating facts on ground. And the Chinese are creating facts on ground. They're building roads into parts of Western Bhutan. They're building the small villages, you know, out there. And eventually they will say this was always ours. So the Chinese technique of border negotiation has to be understood more clearly. And the Bhutanese must be much more focused on, because if they intend to give this areas over to the Chinese, then do it fast. Don't hesitate.
Dr. Joshi, like you have repeated several times that Bhutan doesn't have the capacity to police its boundary with China. Do you mean to say that the revision of 1949 Indo-Bhutan Friendship Treaty in 2007 is a blunder on the part of Bhutan? Do you think the Indo-Bhutan Friendship Treaty of 1949 that was revised in 2007 is a blunder on the part of Bhutan?
No, I don't think so. I think, you know, the status of Bhutan was very different. Bhutan used to be a British protectorate to start with. So I cannot expect, you can't have a country which is a member of the United Nations, you know, accepting the old treaty. So the new treaty is fine. Meaning there's no problem with the new treaty as such, you know, in my view. That's not the issue that I'm trying to raise. All I'm trying to say is you look at the capacity, whether can Bhutanese patrol that border. So even when this Doklam crisis occurred, there was a Royal Bhutan Army post on the Zompelri Ridge. And the Royal Bhutan Army post, according to the Chinese, the post people told them that there is no problem from our side. This is what the Chinese claimed on that. You see? So there was one post out there in this very sensitive area. So this is very different from the Sino-Indian border. Now, if you look at the Sino-Indian border, it has become thoroughly militarized. Both sides have been building up very feverishly, and it's a very different thing. So out here, what happens is that in the Bhutan doesn't have that capacity. Even if Bhutan wanted to mobilize the entire country as its army, they would not be able to do it.
Okay, yeah, that is very clear. Thank you, Dr. Joshi. I just want to come back to Dr. Govind Rizal. How do border talks takes place? Is that the border talk between China and Bhutan? Is it taking place as per the convention or a recognized convention, or is it taking place in
Okay.
a, how soon
Uh,
it take place?
Yeah, the border talks between Bhutan and China, they are led by the foreign minister. On Bhutan side, it is the foreign affairs, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and the survey team, and maybe the senior person from the army. They are in the Bhutan team. And on the other side, it is the vice minister from foreign affairs in China. They meet regularly, but the last one, just before this 25th, the 24th was about 9 years back in 2016. And 2017, there was the Doklam standoff, and all the talks were stalled thereafter. But internally, the talks were going on between the expert level. Expert level, now there are three levels. One is ministerial level, expert level, and technical level. And the next year after, the technical team will go for a field visit and look at the things on themselves, and the two sides will sit together and decide and take this to expert level, and expert level will finalize and take to the ministerial level, and the ministerial level will do the final signing off of the document. So that is where it is reached. It may not be much, it may not have been a big problem because the area is very limited, a small area that we are talking about. And the northern part is not very difficult to visit because the roads have already gone there. Means you can sit on the road, you can sit on the border and talk between the two. But there are some other points that are included in the three-step roadmap that was signed in 2021. Three-step roadmap. After the border is solved, the third point is to establish diplomatic relation between the two countries. That is the third step, right? Two steps are solving the issue, and third one is to have an embassy, Chinese embassy in Bhutan. Until now, Bhutanese visit China through Indian embassy in Delhi, and same thing for the Chinese one. The Chinese embassy in India, New Delhi, they look after Bhutan issues. So after the border is solved, then the diplomatic relation between the two countries, that is the next issue in the three-step roadmap.
Okay.
So Bhutan is not in favor of having the P5 countries having embassy in Bhutan. With exception, the China is coming for a consulate. UK just recently, last week, they have a consulate. They have established a consulate in Bhutan, Thimphu, and they have appointed one good friend as the consular on behalf of the UK government in Thimphu. So it's coming closer. Now, US will have a consulate soon. So at the level of consulate, the P5 are entering. And United Nations wanted, but all the works of United Nations are done by UNDP. So those are the cases that Bhutan is somehow showing its political neutrality in the world, saying that we don't want the big nations to come here and fight in our place. Otherwise, we cannot control the P5 countries. So that is the stand of the government, which sounds very logical. But what advantage they bring, we are not discussing on those things.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
I personally think that Bhutan at some stage will accept P5 embassies in Thimphu. And
yeah,
when you say P5, the first people to take advantage of that will be the Chinese.
the Chinese.
Yes.
China and US.
See, the others,
US is there.
like the British honorary consulate, See, what has
Yeah.
happened is there's a lot of Bhutanese diaspora all over the world.
Yeah.
So I have met Bhutanese in UK and Bhutanese
UK.
diaspora in Australia and other
Australia.
parts of the world. So there is a certain consular requirement for that. But from the political point of view, the interest will really be the Chinese will be interested in a full-fledged embassy in Thimphu.
I'm looking to China and USA. I think the two countries are
Yeah.
wanting to have their consulate desperately. Other three countries, maybe they will come gradually.
Dr. Joshi, is that a shift in the Bhutan policy towards this traditional policy of not aligning with the P5? Is that a shift taking place?
It's very much tied to the current negotiations with China. If these negotiations go through and the Bhutan-China border is delimited, because the India-Bhutan border is already delimited. So I think Bhutan will be in a position, to take the next step. See, the challenge in Bhutan today, there's a lot of unemployment challenge, economic challenge. There's a lot of, so I think the Bhutanese cannot be halfway. They cannot become a kind of a halfway nation that you want to do certain things and don't want to do certain other things. So I think there will be the challenge. I think once the border is settled with China, there will also be road construction from the north. There will be Chinese projects in Bhutan, Chinese road construction, etc. So I think Bhutan has to be prepared to, if you go into the water, you have to swim. You have no choice.
Yeah.
What will be the reaction of India if there is a establishment of diplomatic relations between China and Bhutan?
I don't think it will be extraordinary, meaning in the sense, you see, by now India has realized, and when we are dealing, let's say, with an even smaller country like Maldives, you see, that one cannot expect your very small neighbors not to take advantage of the geopolitical situation. So they will, in their national interests, they will take advantage of the India-China competition and try to get the maximum for themselves. That's a very logical kind of an understanding. But I also think that India should not get unnecessarily worried because all said and done, whether you like it or not, Bhutan is India locked. If you look at the geography of Bhutan, if you look at the geography of Bhutan, you look at the geography of Nepal, they are India locked, meaning they open south. See, there's nothing much is happening in the north, meaning it's a very inhospitable area, mountainous area. It's not easy to. There's no economic prospects, nothing in the northern side. So what I'm trying to say is that if India is a little bit relaxed about it, though, as far as relations with Bhutan is concerned, we, for example, in this year's interim budget, Bhutan is again going to get the maximum amount of money in foreign aid. For India's foreign aid budget, the number one country is Bhutan. So that is not an issue. As the Sri Lankans learned, because the Sri Lankans, if you see, they went with China for a while, then they just went in another direction. But last year, when they had their major economic crisis, the country that stepped up to help them was India.
Yeah, India was there.
India had stepped up to help them. The Chinese took it easy. They said, we'll see, and they didn't do much. So likewise, when Maldives, several years ago, in Malé, their water treatment plant broke down. So the first country to help was India, because, as I said, Maldives is close to India and far away from everywhere else. So likewise, in the case of Bhutan, Bhutan opens towards India, there are certain advantages, geographical advantages India has, and that geographical advantage can be translated to geopolitical advantage.
Yes, we are taking a very long time.
Yeah, just a couple of
We still
statements
have
from.
some points. I'll ask to Dr. Joshi.
Okay.
Like on 29 February 2024, there is an article written by Major General Ashok K. Mehta in the Tribune. And the heading was Doklam's Shadow Over India-Bhutan Relation. And in that article, he has said that the Bhutan King's declaration of Gelefu Mindfulness City on 17 December 2023 was an act of diversion from the ongoing Bhutan-China border talks. I think, what do you make out of this particular statement from the stature of a person like General Mehta?
Asking me?
Yes.
Well, I think that I don't think that the Bhutanese will be doing something so obvious. I have no doubt in my mind that the king was in India, that the border issue was discussed. So I don't think there was any. The Bhutanese will like to keep us informed on this. The Bhutanese, I don't think that the Bhutanese are going to do anything behind our back. I don't think they will suddenly spring a surprise on us, because that will harm them. That it will have long-term, negative impact on them. So I have no doubt in my mind that while the Bhutanese are negotiating with China one-on-one between the two of them, India is very much kept informed of the state of the negotiation.
I think, yes, you are correct. But what I feel was, like, as you mentioned, that there is a huge brain drain in Bhutan at the moment. So there is a great fear that the country might become empty because of the youth unemployment and the frustration among the educated youth. So, and the king has been trying his best to create an environment where the educated Bhutanese can stay in the country and work and shouldn't have to go out and develop Bhutan as they want. So I think that is the idea behind the Gelefu Mindfulness City. So I think that is sincere effort. But what I find quite shocking is the Major General Ashok K. Mehta writing on such issue without taking into other thing into consideration. And some of the Indian media, I think they are contributing to create an environment in Bhutan where there is a panic, making Bhutanese panic, and then prolong this particular dispute. So what do you say, Dr. Govinda Rijal, on this particular?
Okay, I'll not go to that extent of taking into panic state, but yes, the Gelefu Mindful City, or SARs, are specialized administrative region proposed by the king. That has it is not a very sincere or honest attempt of the king, because from that region a lot of people have been evicted. The area that is proposed for the city development belongs to the people who are in exile. One. And second, many people who are serving in the army, they are resettled in the land of those people who are in exile, who are refugees, who are resettled outside. So that is a controversial land. So there should not have been a big plan over the land unless the issue of the refugee is solved. That is one point. Second one, like India has been asked for $100 billion Indian rupees for the upcoming 5-year plan that starts on 2026 onwards, 2026 onwards, and plus 15 billion as economic stimulus fund from India. And the present government, the present party in the government has been considered closer to India because of the 2013 there was a transient a slash on the subsidy that the Indian government was providing to Bhutan, and the previous government, which was thought getting closer to China, was defeated, and this government, which is now in the government, this party, which is now in the government, had the first chance to come to the power, and people have feeling that this government is closer to India and India will be positive towards this government. So that's the general feeling. And until 2000, until the 11th and 12th plan, India was requested for 45 billion Indian rupees per 5-year plan, but now it is 100 billion. That is a big amount of money that is requested. And that includes some of the money will go to this project. Plus the higher officers in Bhutan, including the highest authority. They were in India recently. They met with the business tycoons, Prime Minister, and requested to invest in this project. That is one case, and that is a straight way of involving Indian business groups in Bhutan. That's okay, but looking at the cost-benefit analysis, those people may not get much benefit because this area does not have a big market, only making city, and without a big market, they may not invest blindly. Some may do for the namesake or for the good names of the country or for their reputation or for keeping some legacy for years to come. They may invest, but not as at the scale that the government has proposed now. And other is the government of Bhutan has been collecting money for the national, national fund, national security fund. And they have collected a good amount of money, and that is supposed to be used in cases of emergencies. Like there was a political problem in 1990, political problem in 1997. There was Operation All Clear in 2003. In those type of cases, the Bhutan government is spending this money. But now it has been about 20 years and they have collected a good amount of foreign exchange. And this is this can be spent by only limited people in the power. Okay? So even if there are no volunteer donors from India supporting this project, Bhutan may call for international bidders to come and invest, and they have some money already. And we know the lowest bidder will be China. So if there are 2 or 3 bidders, two coming from India and a small coming from China, so there will be entry of the Chinese construction workers in Bhutan, and they come with the workers and the plants. So what Mehta says, maybe it is summarized in few sentences, so you cannot imagine the big picture what he is planning to say. But there are some places where we can see that his imagination could be matching with some of the plans that the government is taking over. So it may not be a blunt statement. He must have studied well, understood from the people who have worked in Bhutan for a long time in their situation. So I think that the Galifu project, which the government has brought with a hope of stopping the people from returning and claiming their land, it's okay to have a development project, but not in the land of the people whose owners are outside or who are unjustly put outside. That's what I feel personally.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, there are many things to talk on this one, but let's focus on the northern border with Bhutan
Yes.
and China only.
I think we have taken much time. Now I would like to give the floor to Asika. Do you have any question from the online, or do you have your own questions to the panelist?
Please, okay, unmute it. Good.
Yeah. So I want to ask both of you, Govinda sir and Manoj sir. How do you foresee the future trajectory of the Bhutan-China border negotiations and its implications for future regional geopolitics?
Well, I think the negotiations will go through. Meaning they will go through. They may not be, but they will go through, I would say, more on the Chinese terms than on the Bhutanese terms. Because the Bhutanese do not have much leverage. See, they don't have much leverage to counter China and the Chinese, given their background, and I gave you the example when the Chinese said that no question of concession. Their attitude is that they will not give any specific concession. Essentially, they will take what the Bhutanese will have to concede what the Chinese are willing to give. I don't think Bhutan will compromise on Sakteng because that's a bridge too far. But I think the other areas, there will be some compromise, and the Chinese will also go along with making some, what should I say, something for the public relations. In the sense, they will say that we have conceded this, or we have conceded that for the Bhutanese. They would like to show the outcome of the negotiation as what they call win-win negotiation. There will be a win-win this thing. So there will be a certain publicity value there because the Chinese are looking at a larger relationship with Bhutan in that region. And I'm sure Bhutan is also looking at a potentially larger relationship because we've just been talking of the economic issues and economic crisis. Bhutan needs all the help it can, and there is a limit beyond which India cannot help. India has its own problems. India is not a rich country. Whereas in the case of China, you can, meaning if the Chinese, if Bhutan-China relations improve, the Chinese may be willing to invest more money on development aid to Bhutan. So all that is possible. But as far as the political implications, I don't think India will be too worried about that because we have seen how, whether it is Nepal, whether it is Sri Lanka, how this goes up and down. So it's not a zero-sum game. It's not a zero-sum game. So beyond the point, India will not get too excited about this relationship. There is a certain logic to it, and that logic will go ahead.
Thank you for your question. This border issue should have been solved long back. It is long pending, but it will be solved anyway. It will be solved in a good way. What the people in the government in Bhutan, they should be intelligent enough to convince the government in India and the government in China that even if India and China are not very friendly, as a neutral country, as a non-aligned country, Bhutan should be able to convince the leaders in the two countries that if Bhutan is friend with China, does not necessarily mean it is against India. If Bhutan is a friend with India, does not necessarily mean it is against China. Same thing with India and Pakistan or other countries. Like we have to accept in South Asia, India is the pole. Like we have two poles before in the Cold War. In South Asia, India is our pole. We have to go with India as we are in India locked in most of the cases. And another case, people in Bhutan should have trust with both the countries and should establish more relation with the people of the other two countries, not just the government level. Even the people level should have a relationship. And what I see after maybe several years or several decades, Bhutan will acknowledge the roads that has been constructed from China and bringing into the center of Bhutan. And from south, we have a border going to northward, and the border from sorry, not border, the roads from India, roads from China, they meet in Bhutan, and Bhutan becomes economic transit point. So from that one also Bhutan can prosper without going antagonist to either of the countries. We can prosper economically by being a reasonable economic transit point in center, but it has to be dealt most carefully because both countries are not trusting each other at present, and we have to have a trust bridge. We have to build a trust bridge between the two countries, and that is the advantage that we have geographically, economically, and politically as a small country, non-aligned country, and neutral country. That is what I think, Jessica.
Mr. Joshi, you previously mentioned that Bhutan might favor China due to the fact that China might give more opportunities to Bhutan than India. Given that more than a lakh youth will enter the job market by 2032, do you think that impacts Bhutan's decision on this?
I don't think Bhutan will look at this in that kind of a blunt this thing. But I think it will be step-by-step process.
Yeah.
It'll be a step-by-step process. And here, you see, even Chinese calculations will be step-by-step because they also know that Bhutan and India have a very close relationship. See, they know that there's a very close relationship and they know that Bhutan has options. So it's not that Bhutan doesn't have any options at all from the political and economic point of view. You see, so I think basically what we will see is a normalizing of Bhutan's foreign policy. When I say normalizing, what I mean is that it will then be a situation of a small country between two very large countries and using diplomacy and self-interest to promote its own interests. You see, and that is what, in my opinion, that's what Sri Lanka is trying to do. That's what Nepal is trying to do. Of course, sometimes they go sometimes it gets out of control. But I think at the end of the day, what Bhutan would like is that it is able to benefit from both its large neighbors without the large neighbors getting into a conflict kind of a situation.
Thank you, Mr. Joshi.
I think Bhutan shouldn't be compared with Nepal, Maldives, Sri Lanka, because the relationship between Bhutan and India is a very good relation. It has. I don't think that Bhutan will reach to that stage. And most of the Bhutanese educated people were educated in India, and almost all the people in Bhutan speaks Hindi, and Bhutan is India is the engine which through which the Bhutan economy runs, and the nickel trum and rupees the equivalent. I think it is Bhutan and India has a very good, smooth, very very nice relation, and I am very optimistic that such dispute with China will not hamper such a smooth relations. As in 2023, the King of Bhutan has visited India several times, twice, and he met almost all important people. So I think there is a very nice understanding. There is always isolated issues, so it has to be resolved mutually in a very understanding way. I think that's what I think. Now I think yes.
Just regarding the relationship, yes, Bhutan has both the government and the people of Bhutan. We have very good relation with India, and India we have to look at two. One at the people's level, at the government's level. With the people's level, for everything we have good things or bad things. Whenever we have problem, it is the people of India that we resort to first. Whether it is big news or small news, we have to resort to Bhutan people. People are in India. But there are certain cases where the state of India has not been very positive with the people of Bhutan, like the refugee issue. It has been long rendering, and India has been very silent on this issue, silent spectator on this issue. The 2007 Kulagangri that was ceded to China, India did not ask even one question, whether it is in private or in the public. And third thing that you have said is we understand India better because of the language, the Bollywood, and even our curriculum in Bhutan was in Hindi until 1960. Until 1960, we used to have all the books from India. The teachers from India were there until even now. Even now, there are many teachers. The number is declining. That makes us far from China because we do not understand the language of China, and we do not watch their movies, their perception. We do not understand them. But we understand India much better than we understand China. So those are the things. But there are many cases that we have very high expectation from the government of India, from people we have. We don't have to complain that people of India don't understand. There's no complaint, but the government of India have many other places where we have very high expectations from. Okay.
Dr. Joshi, any comment?
No, I think, the thing is that when I said right in the beginning that Bhutan opens out into India, I mean, there is a natural geographical advantage that India has, in fact, that used to be the case of Tibet also.
Yeah.
Meaning the closest seaport of Tibet was Kolkata, via the Nathuda. And all the Tibetan elite would go via Kolkata, via Nathu, or some were settled in Kalimpong and those areas. So there is a certain geographical advantage. Now, of course, the China-India issue has cut off Tibet from its Indian connection. But there was a substantial Indian connection with Tibet. But I don't foresee any situation in Bhutan where the Bhutanese government will say that, no, we won't deal with India. It's not possible. The same thing is the case with Nepal. It's not possible that you think. So I think there is a certain, what should I say, advantage, as I said, India has in terms of integrating the South Asian economy. Meaning it's the big Indian challenge is how do we integrate South Asian economy? Now the SAARC has made an effort. They made an effort in 2004 to create a South Asian free trade area. But unfortunately, nothing much has happened out of the South Asian free trade area. Subsequently, there have been some other agreements, BIMSTEC and BBIN and all that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, India needs to take the lead in integrating the South Asian economy. It doesn't mean that we exploit other South Asian countries. What it means is that there is mutual gain between the countries of South Asia, amongst each other. And in the case of Bhutan, what we are seeing is that a country which for several years chose to remain aloof from the other countries is now integrating. With its neighbor, with India. It also wants to integrate with the region, and it also wants to integrate eventually with the larger integration with the world. And I don't think you can leave out China, because after all, China is its northern neighbor.
Yeah.
So there is a certain logic there which has to be fulfilled. But that logic, of course, there will be some realpolitik there. Issues like Doklam are very much there, Sakteng. These are things which concern us. As I said, India's primary concern is that of security. That none of its neighbors should do anything which will impact adversely on its security. So that's the bottom line as far as Bhutan is concerned.
My last concluding question to Dr. Rizal, then we will conclude our session. Dr. Rizal, as you know, a large Bhutanese population are living in exile. They were refugee, and now they are resettled in various parts of the country, of the world. Some of them live outside Bhutan as diaspora. What do we make? Does Bhutan's diaspora, like us, have a link to the border issue, either as a cause, consequences, or as a venue of potential intervention?
Yeah. Like we may not be the direct cause, but we could be some of the pawns used in between. Like if some issues with Bhutan are not getting solved, someone could play the diaspora outside to raise multiple problems to Bhutan, to force the government in Bhutan to yield to the demands. It is not just India and China. Now the diaspora is in 7, 8 different countries, and they want to open the embassies. They want to have bilateral relations with Bhutan. They want to have their presence in the Himalayas. Those type of things are there. So this Bhutanese diaspora who have been pampered in different countries now may be used or will be used for both good and bad ways. And they could be used as ambassadors for good things, or they could be used as a pawn to infiltrate some bad things. So it's better the government of Bhutan takes a step ahead and solve this problem for the best and for at the earliest, so that the problem will not be left for the future generations to handle it, or it becomes very complex, like Israel or Palestine issue. If it
Do you mean the
the
problem?
time will create more problem in these issues.
Dr.
So
Rizal,
it has to be solved.
problem?
Okay,
Do you mean the problem of Bhutanese refugee issue?
of course.
Do you mean the problem? The problem is Bhutanese refugee issue, or what problem you are referring to?
The people who claim we have the land back in Bhutan, and they want to go back to the Bhutan, but they are not allowed to go. Whether they are refugees, whether they are diaspora, whether they are voluntary immigrants, or whether they were students who went back and they could not return to the country. So there are problems, and these problems should be solved through legal methods. And there are 7,000 people in Nepal waiting for a day to return to country. And if the day comes earliest, it is good for both the sides.
Yes, exactly. Even there are several thousand living in the several countries. They couldn't meet their parents. They couldn't meet their families, and they are not allowed to visa. Even with American passport, they cannot go to Bhutan because the passport is written they are born in Bhutan. So I understand your thing. Thank you very much. Dr. Joseph, do you have anything to add?
No, I think that, if Bhutan is wise, it will reach out to the refugees, to these refugees, because they are themselves, right now, they're looking at a shortage of labor. You see?
Yeah.
So now I know that it's a sensitive subject in Bhutan, but I think if the Bhutanese are able to think out of the box, I think if they want to make their projects succeed, meaning the economic regeneration, economic transformation, they will have to think out of the box. And many of the diaspora, some of them have done well for themselves wherever they are in different parts of the world. They can be an asset. It's like the Indian diaspora, meaning people have gone for economic reasons, but they have often been very helpful to their mother country. See? So I think if Bhutan is wise, they will reach out to these refugees, and this should be another important element in the Bhutanese effort to stabilize their country, stabilize their economy.
Oh, thank you very much.
Last one sentence.
Yes.
Like the government of Bhutan should not fear its people who are outside. they should be able to come and talk and see the differences where the things can be solved. Like before 1990, there was a fear that people are asking for democracy. That means I may not have the privilege. Now the democracy is there in the country. So it is time to reach out to the people and solve the differences. So that is what I think.
Yes, thank you very much. The Bhutanese refugees or those resettled Bhutanese refugees, they are just they were opposing the policies, not the country. They were opposing. They doesn't oppose monarchy. They are just opposing this discriminatory policies against ethnic minorities. So, in this particular issue, the dispute between boundary dispute between India, Bhutan, and China, I think all of us are on the same line. This is the issue of national interest. So all the Bhutanese around the world, they stood solidly behind this particular national interest. And if it could be resolved without antagonizing the largest neighbor and our India, I think that would be the best solution, for a win-win solution for everybody. I hope they will have wisdom to do that. So with this, I would like to thank Dr. Joshi for sparing your precious time and giving us such a nice insight on this particular sensitive issue. I think this issue was not discussed in the Bhutanese circle. I think this is the first time we have taken the initiative, and Dr. Joshi, you volunteered to come with us and talk frankly. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Joshi, for your honest
Thank you.
feedback.
If you
And
have the
very
face,
open.
can you send me the Facebook link of this? Will this be in Facebook or YouTube?
Yeah,
will-
Facebook.
Do you have
It will be
Facebook?
Facebook.
So if you
Yeah,
have the Facebook
we will share
link,
the link. I will
you can
share the
share
video
the-
link to you.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll see you and meet you soon.
Namaskar.
Thank you very much, Dr.
And you know, one other thing which I should tell you, I'm from a mountain region, okay, to the west of Nepal.
Mhm.
And
Uttarakhand?
yes,
Oh, good.
and the thing is that all the Himalayan mountain regions are suffering from depopulation. Meaning all of us leave the mountains because there are no jobs there. You know,
Yeah.
there's nothing worthwhile there. They're a nice place to live, nice place to this thing, but there's nothing worthwhile doing there. So this is a challenge not just for us, for Bhutan or even for China. You know, why is China making those Xiaokang villages? Because no one is living in those areas. They could not get anyone to live in those areas. So likewise, the Indians are following them now. They're making these, I've forgotten what they are called, villages also on the border. See, who wants to live there? It's a very tough area.
Mm.
You know, it's a very, very difficult area. Meaning, I was brought up in this thing when there was no electricity, there was no water in the house, there was no this thing, and I lived in a town. I lived in a district headquarters. You know, so it's this is in some ways there is a common Himalayan problem for all these societies. You know, especially more you go up north towards the higher altitude, people don't want to live there.
Yeah, it's tougher.
They all come away. In our place, there are hundreds of deserted villages.
Yes.
No one living there. You know, so this is an issue common issue for all of us. Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you so much.
We look forward to have continued communication with you and your cooperation. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Govinda Rizal. Thank you, Asika,
Okay, thank you very much.
for your
Thank you.
assistance.
Okay, sir.